This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, visiting diplomat loses his sound system.
Hello, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show that's trying really hard and sometimes isn't doing the best job, but no one can say they're not trying.
Mm-hmm.
That's too true. It's the episode 2, but it's too true for us. Anyway, I'm Gepwin. I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Isix.
Hi.
And this week, it's that one that people don't remember well. I literally forgot which episode we were doing when I started looking at the name. I was like, oh yeah, it's that one with the creepy baby face cloud. And I'm like, no, that's the other one. That's the silence one.
Yeah, we already did that one, yeah. This one is the one with the character who some people might confuse with Reba McEntire, but no, it's Reva, not Reba.
Yeah, this is the episode with the deaf... I don't know what to call him exactly. Mediator? He's not an ambassador. He's a conflict resolution dude.
Arbitrator.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe like he's a negotiator, like in The Big O. And he has a robot somewhere.
I mean, he probably does have a robot somewhere. It's kind of odd that they don't have more robots in this future.
Especially giant ones.
So this episode is called Loud as a Whisper. I don't know. Something about this name bothers me given the content of the episode.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe loud, a whisper and yelling are the same thing. They're equally as useful in terms of some of our character dynamics. So that's a thing. I guess.
Yeah. Sure. That could work. It was written by Jacqueline Zambrano. I think maybe Zambrano. Zambrano sounds more like a name than whatever the heck I just said, so we're gonna go with that. This is her only Star Trek credit. She worked on a horror film called Alligator and a documentary, Killing of America. It sounds dramatic. I never saw it.
Yes. It sounds like one of those exploitation sort of movies that have come through the different ages at different sort of formats. Some of them being like there's a subject that people are curious about but don't know much about, so we're going to exploit the hell out of it and make it really sexy. And there's also exploitation as in, well, people are really into this thing, be it Christianity, it could be politics, it could be people really interested in marching band, I guess. And you have a movie about it, and it could be sexy, but it's usually not. So there's sounds like one of those.
Well, I can't find it with a cursory search, so sure.
Yes. But Jacqueline also wrote a few other things, right?
Yes. I don't know which one you're talking about specifically. Everything else I have is a bunch of fairly generic-y sounding early 2000s TV shows.
Well, there's Gabriel Fire, which I guess is notable because it has James Earl Jones as sort of like the main character, I guess. So that's kind of cool. But I've never heard the show before, so...
Yeah, she was around. She's one of those people who doesn't have a Wikipedia link, so, Wikipedia doesn't care about her.
Does this person exist? We don't know!
If someone's not on Wikipedia, it's like they don't exist anymore, which is sad. There's something deeply sad about that.
Thankfully, some of my friends actually do exist because they have Wikipedia pages. So sometimes for weird reasons. Anyway.
So we've got more guest stars than normal, even though some of them are odd. Not the guest star. Well, one of the guest stars is odd, but the characters are odd.
Are you calling Cole Meany odd?
No, I'm calling Leo Darman odd. Anyway, this episode's main guest stars, we've got Howie Sego as Riva. He's a very well-known deaf actor. He appeared in Hunter, The Equalizer, was involved in the PBS children's show Rainbow's End, which, if I didn't know it was a PBS children's show, I would think it was some sort of weird leprechaun horror movie.
Alternatively, like a sci-fi original that's trying to be childhood's end but different.
Or just a really like depressing movie about the waning years of a resort town.
Yeah, that might be something to put on the list of things to write for me. Anyway.
He originally suggested that Star Trek do this episode. His wife was a big Star Trek fan. They'd never done an episode featuring a deaf character. So he through his interested contacts, got in touch with the Star Trek producers and suggested a episode about a deaf mediator.
And so they're like, okay, let's do this. Let's put this together.
Which is fun. Like, usually that's just weird because, he gets an excuse because they didn't have any representation on the show. So it's like, you should write a role for me.
Yeah. Like, who are you? I'm Howie Seago. Oh, well, okay then.
And then we've got Marine Mosen, who's won over Via's course. There are 3 people who are essentially the same people and operate as a weird sort of psychically connected mono entity.
Indeed. They're not a Greek chorus, but they kind of act as such for Riva.
Yeah, they sort of are a Greek chorus. It's an interesting concept. So she's a successful TV actor. She had roles on something called Not Landing. I don't know what that is. Dallas, Hill Street Blues. And she's also married to very notable Star Trek guest star John DeLance.
Mm-hmm. And Knots Landing is a soap opera from the 80s. And she was also in The Bold and the Beautiful as Dr. Tracy Peters for like 16 episodes in the early 90s.
So I do remember a story from a convention or something that John DeLance was telling that he and his wife, who were both guest stars on the show, they were letting their kid watch the show. And they were worried about showing him an episode in which his mom dies because it's a younger kid.
Yes.
So they watch the episode anyway. And the kid turns around to his dad and says, "Dad never dies on the show."
That's one way to react, yes.
No, you're right. You have correctly identified sexism in the TV industry.
Yep.
And let's see, 2 more. So Randy Oglesby. Why did I give myself a job where I have to read names?
So you could practice reading names.
Yeah, but I'm still not good at it.
Well, that's fine. That's why I'm here to help you. That's why I'm the co-host, right?
I can barely read English. Names are harder. It's not fair. They taught me phonics, and phonics is a lie.
That is true. Being hooked on it doesn't necessarily help you actually read. Sorry, folks.
I just got to get my next fix. Next phon fix. I'm having a normal one today. I'm sorry. All right, this is his first Star Trek appearance, but he's one of the few actors who has played 7 characters across every iteration of Star Trek up to Enterprise.
Yeah.
He's also been in the X-Files, Angel, Independence Day, Liar Liar, Pearl Harbor. He's probably the best known person on this episode, which is interesting because he's like one of the weird little side dudes. Yes. He goes on to glory.
It's like, well, I'm here in Star Trek. This is cool. Maybe I'll come back a few times and do everything else too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're going to do Dallas today, and we're going to be in the Hit List, and Murder One, and Seventh Heaven, and Promised Land, Chicago Hope, The Guardian, The West Wing, more Star Trek, more Star Trek, more Star Trek.
And then
True
finally,
Blood.
We have Leo Damian, who is also playing Riva's Course.
Mm-hmm.
The casting for this, the freaking credits are so weird. Anyway. He's had a lot of TV guest roles. He was on Murder, She Wrote, something called The Last Temptation of Christ, which, I know what that is, but I never heard of it as a TV show.
I thought that was a movie, actually.
It might be a movie. I thought it was in his TV list. But anyway, he was in that. He's also worked as a producer.
He was also in the movie Ghosts Can't Do It.
Oh, no.
Yep.
All right, this one, I found this on a webpage, and I don't mean, I hope this doesn't come across as mean. I just thought this was very funny because it is almost so obviously written by him himself, because It says that he is well known for a YouTube cooking channel called Taste This, where his fans love his popular catchphrase, "So lemony."
Well, it's either written by him or a super fan, which, sometimes that's hard to tell the difference between the two.
Well,
but yeah.
The thing is that I looked up this YouTube channel, and I think the most revealing thing I can say is that it was difficult to find this YouTube channel with the name and the star's name.
Oh, dear.
And it no longer seems to be in operation.
In other words, I'm more active then.
Yes.
Yes.
But you don't have the popular catchphrase, "So lemony."
Maybe I should steal it.
You could, yeah.
This Minecraft build is so lemony.
And yeah, that's that.
Now, there are technically some warriors, but they are barely in this, so yeah.
Yeah, the Warriors 2.
Richard Levine, Chip Heller, and then, miscellaneous background characters.
Yeah. But I can't name everybody. This is a TV show. It takes too long.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, so the Enterprise has been tasked with carrying a mediator to the Remeditus star system.
The remedial star system.
Yeah. It is a place with a bitter conflict that's been raging for centuries. They have lots of those.
And it's just kind of a question of, all right, so you have been literally at war for over 1,000 years. I don't know if it's local time or standard galactic year time or whatever, but that sounds like a really long time, to the point that everyone that has ever fought in this, the chances are that they are already dead, either by the war or old age. So, yeah, you kind of have to beg the question of, what's the point?
Yeah. Though, I mean, it's difficult to say. Is it one continuous conflict? Is it a lot of sporadic conflicts? I mean, technically, we've kind of been at war for the last 100 years.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, if it's one giant conflict, yeah, then, you're going to run out of people at some point. But if it's, sort of a... we're kind of, exerting our will over the planet in various ways and having various, enemies of the moment, or, maybe a one primary enemy and, proxy wars and all that sort of stuff, then, yeah, things can last quite a while, because there's not a pinch point where there's a potential for total devastation.
So Picard's in his ready room trying to work out why the planet has a wonky orbit.
Because
just because.
Yeah.
He doesn't have an idea why it's happening, and it's never going to be resolved, and it's not important. It's just showing Picard doing some random science stuff because they needed him to be doing something.
Yes. And it also lets us show off his holographic desk thingamajig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Picard's going to lead the away team down to the planet. Riker's worried, but it's fine because it's just a diplomatic introduction, not a proper away mission. So the captain gets to go down and have some fun on the planet.
Hooray!
In the transporter room, they meet with Worf, Troy, and Worf's also worried because, the captain.
Yeah.
But apparently Riva helped broker peace talks between the Klingon Empire and the Federation. I don't really know why this makes him upset, but sure.
Well, maybe it's more of he's afraid of Riva in some fashion, because if this guy can tame the heart of the many Klingons, he might be able to, convince Worf to punch himself or something.
Yeah, this guy faced up with Klingons and made them stop fighting.
Yes. It's like, hey guys, what's up? You're going to stop fighting there. And the Klingons are like, no. But 5 minutes later, oh yeah, maybe this peace treaty thing is a good idea. Yeah.
So they beam down to a large, fancy room that's completely empty. After a bit, a large man enters. He's got a full beard. He's pretty tall. Very imposing figure, this dude.
Yeah, and if I had shorter hair and kept my beard a little bit better, he might actually look a little bit like me, actually. So,
Well, then you should probably trim your beard better.
Yeah.
So there are also 3 other people. These 3 start doing the talking. Picard introduces his team, and Rivera, the large bearded guy, not Rivera, Riva, Riva, the large bearded guy, is very interested in Troy, apparently. Picard's very curious about his method of communication. Turns out that Riva is deaf. In fact, the ruling line of this planet has always lacked the gene for hearing. They're just always deaf. And over the years, the chorus has attuned themselves to the ruler, so now they are psychically connected, and the chorus speaks for the ruler dude.
Oh, that's kind of cool, but it does beg some questions, though. Like, are these folks, like, the only members of his chorus? And if so, what if some of them, like, die of old age early? Does he get new people to replace them, or why?
The only thing they really say is that this thing takes a while. Like, these people tuning to whatever, his brain, whatever it is, takes a bit, so maybe you can replace them, but it's difficult.
Oh. Have to do interviews and, hang out and go on a vacation together for a while just to sort of see if things work out. And then, at some point, it's like there's a weird faux pas. And you're like, but I wasn't thinking that. It was that guy over there. And they're like, oh, man. And so, you have to sort through all that stuff. Well, also, they mention some royal lines and the like from Earth's history and, a mention of hemophilia. But I don't recall them mentioning specifically the ridiculous Habsburg chin. It's like, yeah, so this is the face of a royal. So you look at someone whose chin is like the largest underbite you could ever like possibly have on someone, and that was like really common in their life for a while.
You have a particular problem when you have these royal families that all have to marry each other's cousins for generations.
Exactly.
And I don't feel bad about saying that because they're royals.
Yes.
Go away.
Screw that. You inbred yourself too much, and now you are out of power. Hooray!
Anyway, I forgot to write down the details of the thing, but in here and then later, there's a very good scene that a lot of people cite where Riva yells at Picard for not talking to him because you should talk to the person and not the interpreter, which is a very, very common mistake people make.
It's like, all right, so we're interacting with you, but my instinct is to talk to the person who is talking here, but that's, actually kind of rude here. So
So they get all the explanations of what's going on, and then they are transported back to the ship. Riva comes to the bridge to meet the crew. Picard tells the crew how to interact with him and the chorus, which is also nice.
Yeah, it's like, all right, we're going to play this respectful, make sure everyone's up to date, and so that we can, avoid any sort of weirdness.
Riva, wanders around. He likes Data because he's unique and interesting, and he bonds with Geordi over how he's blind and has a visor.
I think, it's like, it's you're different, so that makes us special. That's kind of cool.
He has he calls his visor the visual equivalent of the chorus.
Which I guess I do prefer the visor over the one dress from that one episode. It's a little more low key.
So Riva's shown to his quarters. He very creepily asks Troy to accompany him. She's into it, but people need to be less creepy on this show.
Yes.
He and the hottest chorus member leave together, leaving the other two to hang around.
Yes. Well, the other two chorus members aren't needed, so Mr. Scholar and Mrs. Harmony can hang out with Worf and bother him.
Yeah. We don't need to be there. We only need the hottest guy.
Yes.
So in Riva's quarters, he flirts with Troy some more. They talk about how they both basically do the same thing, helping people communicate. Then he asks if he can have dinner with her after the briefing. She says she's looking forward to it, so, everyone's into this, apparently. They can't write flirting on this show to save their lives, so it all comes across as really weird and creepy.
Yes. And, it would be kind of nice to maybe have a guest character come on and start flirting with one of the main cast, and the main cast member being all like, I don't go work that quickly. Maybe down the road we can, make something work, but right off the bat, it doesn't feel right. Let's get through this mission first, and then maybe we can hang out.
So we get a briefing. We finally know what's going on. There's two factions of this planet that have been fighting for centuries. Now they're on the verge of extinction. Seems like took a while.
Yeah. Well, we sent everyone off to war, and 99% of them have not come back. Do we have anyone else? Not really.
So Riva interrupts. None of this actually matters. The fight probably started for some reason. There's land or money or something. But it's been going on for so long, the only reason that anybody's fighting is because they used to fight.
Mm-hmm. Inertia.
But something must have changed because now they're asking for help. So this is some really good news.
Yeah, and what changed here specifically?
Yeah, this is some really insightful stuff. It's well-written dialogue for a mediator character, and it'd be really great if it ever went anywhere or paid off.
Yes, because we never learn what has changed here, and the story is not really about the negotiations at all. So
yeah, and Riva's now done, and he leaves to be horny.
Yeah. So Troy, let's go hang out.
Like, he and Troy talk for a bit about the ship. He sends his chorus away, and they communicate with some very rudimentary sign language that Troy's able to understand almost immediately, probably because she's empathic, I would imagine.
She's empathic, and she's smarter than she's written usually. So
So on the bridge, they detect weapons fire on the planet. Picard contacts them to explain that they will not bring the ship any closer if they do not maintain their ceasefire. One of the factions contacts them, and they're kind of pissed that it's not Riva talking to them. The other faction forces themselves into the conversation and also demands Riva, so Picard has to interrupt dinner.
Sorry, I guess the people that like to kill each other are being impatient now because they are still needing to kill each other unless they talk to this guy.
Yeah.
All right.
So Troy and Riva enter with the chorus. He tells the fighters that they're really brave for wanting to stop shooting each other. So they stop shooting each other, and they decide to beam down to, start setting things up.
Good negotiating area on a bit of a hilltop, mountain peak sort of windswept, desolate place, Lots of stone columns everywhere that look like they've been taken from the Star Trek V set. And, nice open meeting place where we can...
Now, up to here, I like everything they're doing up to here. Here's just a guy who has a novel way of communicating that other people aren't used to, but he's obviously a complete expert at what he does. Mm-hmm. He's completely good at it, and he's able to put up with all these novel situations. He's talking down people who can't even keep a ceasefire up long enough to get to the negotiating table.
Yes.
He's got insightful ways of thinking about how to do mediation. It's really good. And then they beam down to a hilltop with Riva and the chorus and Riker and Worf, and they begin beaming down furniture in preparation for the factions to come. Mm-hmm. Both factions are supposed to have one representative and one guard. They get into an argument. The guards start yelling at each other and go, "Death before peace," and start firing. Riker grabs Revere out of the way, and the chorus gets vaporized. The first alien shoots his guard, goes, "No, we wanted peace," and then they all beam away. He's like, shit.
Well, that fell apart quickly.
Yeah. So, see, everything up to now I really liked. But now, Riva is frustrated and loses all confidence because he can't communicate without his chorus, and he's just angrily signing. But no one understands sign language, and he is too agitated to slow down.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mishmash, but the actual sign language, I believe, is supposed to be American Sign Language. So
it is. He's just speaking ASL.
Yeah, which
you can actually translate it.
Yes, I probably should have done that before we recorded.
I have one. I found it once. I had some notes about it. Someone had a full translation. Apparently it's difficult to see because they didn't film it in a way where you can adequately see the signs particularly well. Yeah, because he's just doing stuff. Apparently he ad-libbed most of it. No one bothered to write sign language dialogue.
It's like, well, just do what you think would make sense here. Okay. Yeah.
So Picard orders Data to work out what sign language he's using and to learn it. Then they take Riva back down to sickbay because he needs to calm down. So Data narrows it down to 5 possible languages and learns them all because he has an android brain and can do that in a couple minutes. Makes sense.
Yes, I'm effectively a living book that you can, that can just, look up anything I need to. So skill-wise, I have basically everything. Basically, he's like, the various characters that go into the Matrix.
So they have a universal translator that can figure out any alien language, even ones it's never heard before.
Indeed.
By looking at basic language patterns and working it out backward from there. And it has no way to pick up visual language.
Apparently. It can interpret the thought processes of a cloud, but it can't, sort out American Sign Language.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also, there's some very troubling implications to the fact that none of them know what sign language is.
Yes. I guess
we'll get to
no one
that.
no one in the future of the Federation is deaf anymore, I guess.
Pulaski explains that she can't do anything for Riva's hearing because he just lacks the gene that allows audio input to properly reach his brain. So, there's no cure. Oh, no.
So, the whole infrastructure just doesn't exist. So, you'd have to basically, build part of his brain, and, that's a little invasive.
So, Data's learned signs and demonstrates they seem different to what Riva's using, but I would have to directly look it up to know for sure. But it seems like they're speaking different sign languages as far as I can tell.
So, it's a little awkward, but I guess we'll roll with it.
Well, in this demonstration, this is just a demonstration that Data's giving, where he's like, this is the sign for this is the sign for this. And they all seem to be nonsense as far as I can tell. I was never very good, but I took 2 years of ASL in college. So I actually know a little bit of here.
You're more on top of things than I am.
Now, Riva does seem to be just using ASL. He blames himself for the death of the chorus. He was being incautious because he was arrogant. And he feels useless because he can't complete his task without the chorus. So, that's where we're at now. He's lost all of his confidence because he doesn't have his communication tools.
In some ways, he and Worf are on the same page in terms of, imagining his greatness. And, now he's, even if he still has, that sort of view of him in some capacity, not being able to express himself as he wants to, kind of puts a giant monkey wrench in that plan.
We go back to sickbay for a minute for what is a completely useless scene about how Pulaski thinks she could re-go to Geordi's eyes.
She's totally done this several times before, too.
Yeah, there's no setup for this. It's just there. It doesn't pay off. It undermines most of the themes of the episode.
Yep. They apparently put this scene in here because LeVar Burton was making some, showing some interest about, getting rid of the visor at some point. And so they're like, well, we might be able to do that. Let's have a scene in an episode. Just happens to be the one where, we're dealing with, folks who, have physical, handicaps and the like. So that's awkward as hell. But if this seems to be something we want to do, we can now have the background set up for Pulaski to just sort of pull off the surgery one day.
I know that there's a lot of back and forth, especially in the early seasons where LeVar Burton doesn't like acting with the visor because it does take away a lot of what you can do with acting. There's a lot of eye work in acting.
Yes.
But as I understand it, they kept getting way too many letters about how amazing it was to have a visually disabled person on the ship.
And so, it's like, oh, all right, well, this is something people actually like in terms of the character. Sorry, LeVar.
So Troy goes back to talk to Riva with Data because they can translate. She's been tasked to try to broker the peace talks, and, if he can't do it. So she wants to... get help.
So what's the basics? Where do we start?
What's your trick? What's the trick you use? He goes, I don't have a trick. I just get people to talk and then try to get them to listen. And you can turn disadvantages into advantages. And Troy goes, well, do that then. Haha, I have fixed you.
Well, now that you mention it, I guess I do have a big disadvantage right now.
And he goes like, yeah, I have an idea. That would work. Data goes, what? I'm only getting half of what you're saying here, dude.
Poor Data.
So, Revia returns with Worf and Riker to the planet. Data and Troy are also there this time, I guess. Just feel like it. They beam down to the table and light torches so the factions know they're back, and he tells them all their plan, that he's going to stay there alone and teach them all his language so that they will all learn it and have something in common and have to learn a new way of speaking to each other.
I guess with learning a new language, it does toss some complications if one is trying to be deceptive. You can in a very direct way communicate information that is incorrect, but hiding it from being obviously a lie does get a little more tricky.
Well, you also have to think through what you're saying more. You have to pay more attention to what the other person's saying because it's a language you don't speak well. There's lots of research that says being multilingual affects your ability to think more broadly about things. So they leave him there. I guess they consider him to be safe enough.
Yes.
And then Picard tells Troy that she did a really good job. The end.
Thanks.
I didn't have a good way to write it. There's a couple of really cringy scenes in here. Like Picard at one point after the chorus dies, like grabs Riva's head and starts yelling at him. She should not do.
Yeah, we're in this together.
A lot of his
yelling, Captain.
Incoherent ranting when he's just signing wildly, and they say like, "Oh, we can't tell what you're doing. It's too can't pay attention to you. You're doing this too fast. Calm down." Like a lot of the stuff I've seen translated, which again is difficult because you don't get a full-on shot of his hands well. But a lot of the stuff he's saying is like, "This is not about you. Shut up."
Yeah, which kind of makes sense to say at that point. So
talking louder isn't helping.
So I'm panicking. You guys are what the hell, guys? Come on. So loud as a whisper.
Yeah. So what did you think?
Well, there are elements of the story that I really like, but there are elements that, as you've pointed out, are very like. So I guess it's one of those things where, well, kind of as you started our episode here, that they were kind of trying, and I guess we can give them credit for that.
So I need to give some cultural context for this because the way that we, having grown up in the late 80s and 90s, think about disability is very different than where the cultural context of disability was when this episode was written and aired. Because this episode came out a full year before the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. People were actively advocating and protesting at the time.
It's like, maybe we could, do anything to not be crappy to disabled people.
Yeah, so the cultural context around which this episode was written is that disabled people do not have the same rights to live as other people do because they might need special accommodations that are not necessarily provided, which people can think of as unfair because, you need extra accommodations, but you don't need extra accommodations. You need different accommodations.
Exactly.
We all get accommodations that work for us as able-bodied people because we don't have to think about it much. It's just considered to be the default. You have a lot of stuff in place that makes the world easier for you to navigate. And all people with different sets of needs are saying is it would be nice if they had that too. Exactly.
So I guess maybe sort of a obvious way to sort of showcase this would be, in tune with the episode to a direct degree. What if nobody, except for a very small number of people, were able to hear? How would that world of ours look like?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that. You have lights, you have video phones. They actually have stuff set up pretty well for a deaf person in this future because everything's visual. They have very little directly only auditory inputs.
I'm sort of imagining a world where sound is not important at all. There is no music. There is no language outside of sign language or written communication, or maybe something else that we figured out. There, and so so you let's say you were born as someone who is able to hear, and you are now sort of faced with a world where you can learn these things in order to communicate with everyone else who cannot hear, which is the majority. But if you use a different form of communication to talk to someone who is not deaf as well, then the majority is like, what are you doing? Why are you communicating like that? Now, and so there could be a sort of a moments of distrust and aspects that come out where it's sort of like, this person is different and therefore bad. And all we did was, flip the equation around.
I see what you're saying on there. You did fall into a couple of traps already.
Exactly. It's not a great
music. There's
analogy,
definitely deaf music. I've heard it. No. It just tends to be more bassy.
Yeah, so you can feel it as opposed to pick it up with your ears.
Mm-hmm. Also, there are plenty of people in that situation because deaf people tend to live in their own communities, both because language turns into culture. Mm-hmm. Like, people with their own distinct language will eventually have their own distinct culture. It's the way that it works. But also because historically in the U.S., we've taken deaf children and sequestered them in their own individual schools and things and separated from the rest of society, which also tends to, turn into communities. But there are plenty of, hearing people who are born into deaf communities. So they learn to communicate with sign language and also verbally, and in different communities, they have to behave differently.
Indeed. Don't get with my examples where people didn't know all that stuff. But now that they do, they are now more enlightened, and thus my terrible analogy breaks down. But,
one of the other things that, for cultural context around this is something that I had to learn. When you take ASL at the college level, they give you a bunch of deaf history stuff. And this episode took place only a year after one of the largest deaf advocacy demonstrations in U.S. history up to that point, where a historically deaf university, like one of the largest deaf universities in the U.S., Gallaudet, had never had...
Awesome name.
It had never had a deaf person on the a deaf president. It had never had a deaf president or a deaf person running the college.
Wow.
So in 1988 they elected a new president who was another hearing person, and there were massive protests until they got them to elect an actual deaf person to run the deaf school.
Yeah, it's like, come on, guys. If we're going to have a community focused institution like this, at least let somebody from that same community run things from time to time, if not usually.
And see, that's the thing that we need for the context here and the way that all of this is being demonstrated, because that's the idea. It's not that deaf people have their own needs and culture and other things, and other than that, they get along in the world just fine. It is that deaf people and other disabled people have something wrong with them that we need to fix or accommodate as shittily as possible. The idea that a deaf person would be in charge of a deaf university seems obvious to us now, but at the time it was like, well, why? Because you just have these people that have something wrong with them. There's no reason that they need to be able to run a thing, or you can't see the cultural difference that would result from having an actual deaf person running the deaf school.
There's probably a fair bit of it's like, well, we could potentially have someone in that position, but they are not, physically able to do the job. Yes, because that.
I think that one of the things that shows too is the original draft for this episode ends with Riva needing to be taught how to speak.
Ew.
Which has a lot of really, really bad historical context to it. Deaf children were usually taught how to speak, naturally, before ASL was standardized into its own actual language. Deaf kids will naturally sign to each other. It's a pretty a natural way to try to communicate if you can't hear. And people used to be punished for that and were forced to learn how to communicate verbally or read lips, or which is half a myth anyway. But be forced to learn how to communicate with hearing people in a verbal way. So that has a lot of really bad cultural baggage to it, and Howie Sego told them not to do that. Without him, he this episode would have ended really badly. He told them that was a bad ending and made them change it.
It's this episode is inspired by me, pushed by me, and I'm going to be the guest star in it. And if you want this to actually go forward, then make it not awful, please.
Because there's two things around that. Forcing people to learn how to talk because it's convenient for you is a problem. But also this episode has this odd thing in it that I as a hearing abled person can't quite figure out my feelings on, because the chorus thing is an interesting novel concept, and it's kind of in there as just a disability communications tool, but it is one that exists solely for the benefit of hearing people. So he has to have this thing around to the point where he has a complete breakdown of confidence when it stops. And it's not like he doesn't know another language. He immediately switches into sign language. So he obviously knows how to communicate non-verbally.
But I guess one of the things I, sort of thinking about it now, given what you've, talked about in terms of your understanding what he was actually signing, is that maybe he is fully able to, via the universal translator or something like that, and not whatever magical lip reading that was mentioned in the episode, is able to understand everyone, but he's just being so frustrated with not being able to express himself without this, external aid, that, he's very, he's sort of angry about that, but he's also angry that everyone else is not understanding that he is still in the game, that they are viewing him as now completely cut off, and he doesn't have the tools at the moment in order to drive forward on that front, because they're not understanding him at all. And it's
the fact that he gets so frustrated at the fact of losing what could have been just a little box. These people are unnecessary. This whole psychic chorus thing is a useless sci-fi concept that they put in here to get some extra actors in and do something strange and novel. This could have been a little box that he wears in his chest that can read his hand movements and translates for him. That's all that they would need.
I do appreciate that he does explicitly mention that they're advisors and friends to him as well. So there's, also that aspect. It's I'm now down my advisors and some of my friends are dead. This sucks.
But that's the thing. You don't get a big thing of, I don't have my team anymore. You get I don't have my communication tool anymore.
Exactly.
Up to the point where a hearing character has to tell him that in fact he still can communicate and it's fine. And that's the resolution to the episode.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely would have liked, if they're going to be using the chorus, actually have that sort of personal relationship matter a lot more. And so, maybe, and so you could have very easily as part of his, angst there, some, conversations and discussion about, maybe my quality as a negotiator was in part because of my chorus, not being able to work with them to shape and push forward with the best negotiating strategy, and to have extra eyes on the situation in order to keep aware of various things that could be going on that may be threatening to the outcomes of the negotiations. Because if you're in the midst of the essential argument and one of your chorus notices that one of the people involved is kind of being a little cagey in some way, or is doing some very subtle sort of tells, they could then inform Riva via their sort of psychic connection that, oh, you're kind of starting to lose somebody. Maybe you should shift gears or something like that. And so, sort of drawing a circle about that sort of, complicated relationship there that he's been perhaps relying too much on, not just they speak for me and that's all I need them for. That would have made, the episode better for me.
Yeah. I think I would have ditched the psychic thing entirely. Had him have a team that they all speak the same sign language. Like, it's all obviously ASL because that's what he spoke already, the actor.
Yes.
But, they could say it's an alien, whatever. Like, they all speak the same sign language, so they can all communicate very efficiently because they all speak the same language, and translating is always, slower. So when he loses his team, he's down his team, he's down his translators, and he feels a lack of confidence because of that, and then he can realize through having to get Troy to communicate with him, like he starts teaching Troy some of the sign language so that they can talk, and then he realizes that if he teaches sign language to the people that he's trying to do, that it'll help them all communicate as well, instead of Troy having to point out that he can still talk.
Yes. So, once again, we've fixed an episode of Star Trek. Yeah, so I like your plan there.
And then, of course, they also get into... Thankfully, they never did this with Geordi. They sort of did. It's still... Like, I get that it's difficult to act with the visor. The visor became such an iconic character thing. It honestly still bothers me that they changed it for the movies. I was, I guess, okay with him basically using a different bit of technology in First Contact. It's like, all right, so, no more visor, but sort of, cybernetic eyes instead. But, that's pretty soon out the window as well. It's like, all right, well, I guess there's nothing going on there anymore. But even that, you get into this same discussion. Like, they even say it in Generations. In the first movie, in Star Trek Generations, the bad guy says, have you ever considered getting a procedure that would make you look more normal? And he says, fuck you, bad guy.
Yes.
And then the very next movie, he shows up with these frickin' magic eyes.
Yeah. It's like, maybe we shouldn't be so focused on appearance and looking like we belong with the group here, and be better about, being excellent to each other and not being bad guys. How about that?
And it's fine. Like, it's fine for him to need a prosthesis to see. I need a prosthesis to see. Like, I've worn glasses since I was 10 years old. Like, people don't think of this anymore because they're so normal, but I need a medical device in order to see.
Indeed. I wear glasses myself, and without them, it's probably not a good idea for me to go driving. It's like I can see the car, but I can't read any of the signs. Uh-oh.
Yeah. And they don't turn anything into an advantage. That's my other issue with the way that they talk about disability on this show, which I've read several takes on, is they treat it like it's magic.
Yeah. Even with the first sort of occurrence of this, as I sort of alluded to, when the Organian was dropping by, and Pulaski's actor was Diana Muldaur was playing the one lady, and her sort of disability, being unable to see, was treated as sort of a superpower in order to be able to interact with the Organian. And so, yeah, that's, a thing they do on Star Trek.
Yeah, she also had that thing in that episode that, no one could tell she was blind because she was so good at interacting with the world. Whereas something like Geordi needs a medical prosthesis, and then he's fine. But it's still visually there, and it's still a problem if he doesn't have it. But then also he can interact with the world just fine normally. I am kind of disappointed we never get even an episode where his visor's disabled and he has to fix an engine by feel.
Yeah, that would have been kind of fun, actually.
Because it would be interesting. Like, he could even say that. Like, somebody could be like, oh no, it's too bad you, like, if we had your visor, we'd be able to fix this thing. It's like, oh, I can still fix stuff by touching it.
Yeah.
It takes me a little longer, but like, I know what I'm doing. Come on.
Yeah, I just have to make sure I'm, have any basic clue about what's, gone wrong, and, tell me what the display saying. That, it's like, oh, we're having a power variability in the EPS conduit on this deck. I was like, all right, then this is how we're going to fix the problem, and I know exactly what to do from here. So here we go. And so you could have a very fun episode where we follow Geordi kind of crawling through Jeffrey's tubes and things like that, maybe with an assistant, and the assistant is just completely baffled by what he's doing, but is sort of trying his best to help, and is just completely blown away with Geordi being able to pull all this stuff off, even without his visor. That would have been kind of fun. Maybe like teaming up with someone who's not technically minded, which I guess maybe Riker or Troy, or even Picard to a degree. Picard, is his background is like a pilot or something like that. So he's not necessarily all that up on, fixing the ship overall. So that might be a fun little adventure.
Yeah, they could be trapped in a shuttlecraft. Something could go wrong. Something could knock out everything, which is why his visor's not working. Mm-hmm. He has to fix the ship by feel. Every now and then he goes, could you read me that number off that panel?
Yes. It's like, oh, yeah, it's this one, that one. I was like, oh, great. I was supposed to have been replaced with a 4812.
I can see why they never did that, because no one wants to have to wear those contacts for more than 10 minutes at a time.
Yes.
That blank out your eyes.
Yeah, it could maybe do a bit of a thing where Geordi's head is just so much in the
yeah, it could have been. You could be seeing the back of his head. He could be underneath a panel half the episode, but still.
Yeah, but it's still been fun.
The thing that we've been kind of dancing around through this whole discussion that I feel like I should just bring up explicitly, even if we don't have enough time to get into too many more weeds here, is one of the newer ways to start thinking about things that's people advocate for better. There's obviously debates and discussions, but one of the ways that you can think about disability is called the social theory of disability, which is basically saying that the thing that someone has, being deaf, being blind, having a movement issue, that is not actually the thing that makes you disabled. That is the thing that makes you different and makes you have to interact with the world differently. The thing that's causing a disability is the fact that the world is constructed in such a way that it makes it difficult for you to interact with it if you do not have what one might think of as the default set of abilities.
Indeed. I guess kind of, rolling back to Disabilities Act there, if you are someone who's wheelchair bound and everywhere you go there's steps, that, isn't your fault that there's only steps in order to get into these places. It is, part of the culture that you are not being sort of accepted into that is set up things that way.
It also does not have to be a loss-gain scenario. It's interesting how oppositional that we consider these things, but using that example, if you have stairs everywhere, it makes it very difficult for someone with a wheelchair to get around. But stairs are also very, very bad for your knees. They're not a good way to get up and down things. Ramps and elevators are actually better for everyone involved. They are less space efficient. They're not always the best solution. But having a ramp as opposed to stairs does not affect me, the person who can walk. Mm-hmm. It's not a thing of like, well, now there's a ramp, so I can't get into this building. Like, the fact that we set it up so oppositionally, it's just a way to try to break down things and make us fight each other.
Yeah. And people fighting each other for silly reasons is a great way to make political hay out of things in order to get yourself votes.
I've always argued, just because I tend to like it as a language, I think it's fun, and it's easier for me to learn because it doesn't involve very much reading. But it's always been kind of baffling to me that we don't just teach ASL as a second language in school, like most of the time. It's the one thing that we can guarantee will be useful. Like, a deaf person can't learn another verbal language as easily as a sighted person can learn a visual language.
Yes.
It's something that would be very, very useful for most people to know, not just to communicate with deaf people, but it would also be really good for you to be able to pull out sign language if something loud suddenly started happening.
Yeah, it's like, all right, we're at a party and I need to find so-and-so. Have you seen them? I can't, you can't hear a word I'm saying, but I can sign at you and you can pick up what I'm trying to get across. And, maybe we could, track them down, or if they're, if they've not seen them, maybe they're in trouble and we need to go out and try to track them down and see what's up. There's, just a simple example there, but, it is a great opportunity for that to be useful by people who are able to hear. People are able to speak, like me and you, Gepwin, and it's just if I knew ASL and knew the people around me also knew ASL, there'd be so many opportunities for me to actually enjoy parties, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that would be really helpful too.
Yeah, because there's a certain degree where if the noise level gets past a certain point, even if I'm trying my best to hear someone and they're talking right into my ear, it's just impossible for me to differentiate the background noise from their voice. And I'm not able to interact with my friends anymore. The music's loud or whatever background noise is going on is loud. And I might be able to dance, but if I actually want to interact with people, then I can't do that now. So why am I here?
Well, one of the things too, like starting to lose your hearing, especially in our modern world, is one of the things that you can almost guarantee is going to happen to everyone.
Mm-hmm. So, being out ahead of that would be kind of nice.
Also, I feel like I should just mention, because some people were taught a version of this in school called Signed English. It is different than American Sign Language. It is a fundamentally different language. Deaf people hate it. And you should not equate the two.
Yeah. Is this the one where you spell out everything?
You spell out a lot of things. It's just that they make an equivalent sign for every word in English. That's why it's called Signed English, and you wind up spelling a lot of stuff. ASL has a fundamentally different grammatical structure than English does. No. It doesn't even make sense to translate the two directly like that.
Translating meaning is more important in that case, not necessarily word for word.
Just as a very quick example, I knew someone at a summer camp once who had learned Signed English with their school, and they were translating a song as a skit thing. And they signed and or and all these other things. I get people, I used to do little demonstrations at the library to help me practice when I was learning ASL, translating books for children, and which is about the level I was at, was being able to talk to a 2-year-old. But
it's a start.
People kept asking, parents would be like, well, how do you sign and or? It's well, you don't. Those words don't exist. There aren't conjunctions. ASL doesn't have conjunctions. I can't help you. I don't know, if you want to sign and, you say this thing, that thing, both of those things. Kind
of made clear by the context.
Yeah.
I guess as someone who dabbles a little bit in constructed languages, it does remind me a little bit of, one of the setups I've done for the one I've been working on the most, where it's, this object, is sort of bracketed by some symbols, and it's next to something that is also bracketed by the same symbols. And because they are sort of, parentheses thing, then that's an and. And so you don't even necessarily have to pronounce those sort of, bracket symbologies there in order to make it clear that you are doing this, sort of combining like that. But it's there in the written language for clarity.
Yeah, that's one of the weird ones with ASL, is it doesn't have a written language. You just write in English.
Yeah. So the requirements are a little different when you have different mediums that it is or is not going to be attached to.
I think the main takeaway that they did get to a bit in this episode, but they definitely muddled it too much, is disabilities aren't something that you have to fix for people.
Mm-hmm.
And stop it.
Yeah. It's a thing that exists, and, we get along, and everything will be cool.
Yeah, I don't even have time to get into, we don't have time to get into some of the things that they've been doing with people recently. So.
Well, there's plenty of Star Trek to go in the future where we can delve into the various things. Don't worry.
Okay, we've gone on about that for long enough. This isn't as depressing as normal, thankfully. Yeah.
But yeah. So hey, the Americans with Disability Act was passed, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
as far as I know, that's not one of the ones they're trying to roll back.
Mm-hmm.
At least if they are, they're doing it way more quietly than some of the other shit.
Yes. I guess one of the things that I'm kind of happy about in general is, looking back at some of the protests and activism by folks before and after the act, in order to, not just get it into law, but also to make sure it's being enforced, is just how tenacious its supporters are. Like, we're going to go into the, Capitol building every single day and make sure that we are being noticed. And, it just makes me sort of, so proud, that there's folks out there that know that they're being screwed over, which is bad, but they are not just complaining about it toward, out in the wilderness, but going to Washington and being like, we're going to make this, we're going to change this, and we're not going to be silent, until everything's actually, better. So let's get going. So, activism, hell yeah.
I don't think that's a good message to end on, so it's probably time for the Galaxy's favorite game show!
Woo! Hey everybody, welcome to the Galaxy's favorite game show. Now, this is a little weird because we are generally an audio medium here, and we don't have the budget for, full closed captioning and all that. But I hope folks of, hearing or hearing impaired are able to enjoy it all the same, especially since we got various contestants here of various abilities who have been racking up various points here that it's now time to hand out a little few prizes here and there. So the first one is the Wharf Effect prize, which goes to Scholar Harmony, the Warrior, the chorus folks, for simply dying to prove the situation is serious, among other things. What do they win, Gepwin?
They win that thing where the gun's not actually a gun, but it's a teleporter, and they're just somewhere else on the planet living it up, and this was actually just their retirement scheme.
Huh. Riva's great and all, but, we always have to be with him when he's, taking a bath. It's really awkward. Let's get out of here, guys. So, our second prize is the TV Love Story prize, which goes to Riva and Troy, at least until the main plot gets the way enough to, kind of push it towards a close friendship territory instead. What do they win, Gepwin?
They win a danged fade to black, because I realized Troy never gets a fade to black on this show. Riker gets 3 or 4. Why can't Troy get any?
Exactly. Maybe they drop by later and pick up Riva, and then Troy gets the fade to black, but that's not actually an episode, so I don't know. Our last prize is the Dropped Plot prize, which, thankfully, goes to Geordi and Pulaski with regards to that whole getting new eyes via surgery business. What do they win, Gepwin?
They don't win anything. It's just... this is why Pulaski got fired. This right here. She kept pushing this thing. It's like, stop it. You're making our engineer uncomfortable. We're getting our old doctor back.
Yes. She technically got a promotion to Starfleet Medical, running the entire thing, but we can, pull some strings and get her back over here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that's all the prizes we've got to hand out this week, so feel free to take us away, Gepwin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Can't remember what joining us is, but you can't see me signing anyway, so doesn't really matter. So thanks for being here on the Galaxy's favorite game show.
don't know if I'm sounding different to our audience or not this time.
Yeah, we've had to change recording softwares. Well, for one person, anyway.
Yes.
So anyway, sorry if everything sounds really bad, and we'll fix it next time.
And just so Gepwin knows, the software does appear to be actually recording still, so that's good.
That's always a good sign.
Yes,
it's gonna be so weird if we have to re-record this. Anyway, next time when our sound might be more normalized. Next episode is called "The Schizoid Man." Not sure why.
Do we have mental health issues to worry about?
Only sort of. Sort of. It's the episode where they meet an old dude who claims to know Data, and then Data starts acting weird.
And it also features the amazing weird ring around Data's head shot.
Yeah.
Which is both hilarious and kind of cool.
So yeah, this is another one of those ones that I just full on did not remember until we were watching through stuff again for this. I was like, oh yeah, that was an episode, wasn't it?
It does feature a particular guest star who is basically in tons and tons of Star Trek.
Yes. An English actor has appeared in over 10 films, 100 films and movies, and acted for 50 years.
He's been kind of in everything, including Star Trek 6. Remember that guy that was like, all right, since you're going to die anyway, I might as well tell you the entire evil plan.
Yep.
And then they beam away.
You also get the first appearance of another actor who's been in lots of Star Trek things. The other Doctor.
Yes.
The Vulcan. I think she was a Vulcan in this one.
Lieutenant Selar?
Yeah, Solar.
Yes, she plays a few different roles throughout, including someone that some folks call Suzy Q, I believe.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, she never gets a normal name on this show. But anyway, she's also in a lot of things, and we'll meet her next time.
So she'll be around.
Yeah, that'll do it. So next time, The Schizoid Man, which is an episode that I'm pretty sure exists and I saw.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, 21st Century Data Man. Bam, 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 bam. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.